Well, tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you so much, Charlotte. Kia ora, everybody, and welcome to the session of the Marlborough Book Festival 2024, Quiet Kitchen. Sorry, we just had to clarify that. I've been calling the book The Quiet Kitchen for the last 2 months, and it was very bad librarian of me to not actually read the title of the book, which is A Quiet Kitchen. Thank you. Nici Wickes is a self-confessed food obsessive. In previous lives, she has been the host of a TV series called The World Kitchen. World Kitchen. We're going to get it right. She's been a food editor for New Zealand Herald's Viva magazine and the New Zealand Women's Weekly. But she gave that all up, including her city life and corporate lifestyle, to move to the tiny seaside settlement of Port Waikato, an hour's drive southwest of Auckland City, to spend time in her small house and even smaller kitchen. In 2020, during the COVID-19 lockdown, Nici started making videos of herself creating delicious meals for one or two if she was really hungry, and posted them on Instagram. Her meals were mostly from ingredients sourced from her pantry and the kind donations of meat and produce from her friends and neighbours. Her cookbook, A Quiet Kitchen, came out of those videos, and the realisation, I think she would agree, that the life of a woman alone can be an extremely satisfying and rewarding one. Please give a warm Marlborough welcome to my guest this morning, Nici Wickes. Nici, do you agree? Is the life of a woman alone a satisfying and rewarding one?
Look, it is for me, and it is now. It wasn't for many years. I think my 30s, as I wrote in A Quiet Kitchen, were really fraught, thinking that it wasn't okay to be alone and feeling very exclusive and I suppose, deficient in that way of being alone or unpartnered, I suppose it is, and not having had any children. And, I would take myself away for fabulous holidays and things like that. But inevitably, when I came back, there were friends who would say, "Did you meet anyone?" And it always sort of crushed me slightly and I was very defensive about that because I'd gone away on this great holiday and everything was fantastic, but the focus was on this one area. And I myself, because of that, sort of absorbed that and felt I also would think, and it really wasn't until much later in life, I think that really lived with me for my 30s and a large part of my 40s, and then certainly writing A Quiet Kitchen and really settling down during those lockdown periods, I realised with some glee, Tania, how happy I was. And it was a time when I was able to really admit that to myself and really live my best life, which was also being relatively antisocial as well. I didn't have to say no to going out. I didn't have to force myself to go out. I didn't have to cancel things. And I could just live this beautiful little rhythm, which I really, really enjoyed. And I guess I started through the process of writing A Quiet Kitchen. I started really owning that space for myself. And it felt like a bit of a manifesto. I didn't realise that's why I was writing it. When I wrote A Quiet Kitchen, and then, it turns out a few other people feel the same way, or this book has encouraged other women and men and people who find themselves living alone or living in a house where maybe all of the kids have left, so the house feels a little bit empty, a little bit cold. Just sort of warm that idea up for yourselves so that we can have these kind of juicy lives regardless of what situation we're in. Yeah.
Why do you think it was that you'd never partnered? Or do you think, did you just really picky?
Well, are you married?
Yeah.
Were you not picky?
Well, it's not about me.
So that's what I like to say to people because it's not. I don't know why I didn't partner. I really don't. It's been It's been a great mystery to me, really, because I do believe that partnering is a bit of a mystery, or maybe it's about settling. I really don't know the answer to it, but I'm sure if I said to you, did you just settle, you would maybe these days think yes, or right at the beginning you might have thought yes, or you might have thought, no way, she's the love of my life, you know. So I don't know, I think there's some magic in there, and I say certainly in the first book, A Quiet Kitchen, I don't think people get everything that they desire in life. So I've been so very fortunate in every other way, or most other ways that I think, and I just don't know if you get everything. And I don't think that we should expect that. So it doesn't feel like an absence for me at all. It did for some years, but I'm really encouraging, I hope, in these books for people to realise that it's not anything wrong. Some people don't get good health. Some people, I have a friend who's so creative and extraordinary, but she doesn't get the money, so she's always struggling. And so, you know, I just think
or they might have partnered and then something happened to that
right.
partner and they found themselves alone, possibly.
Sometimes we spend our whole lives with people and then we are widowed in our 80s. Or somebody leaves us in our 50s, or whatever that might be. So nothing's for sure. So once I stopped focusing on that sort of one idea of, oh, I need to be with someone to be valid or whatever, it just disappeared for me. And so I did an interview with Women's Weekly a little while ago in preparation for the second book, and had this wonderful interview. And then at the end, she said, the interviewer said, well, but I do have to ask, do you ever think you might meet someone? And I must admit I sank a little bit, because it was like, so what I said to her is, look, I think about it as often as I think about, should I take up cricket? Which is, I never think about it, you know, because I never think about taking up cricket either. Yeah.
But you obviously thought about moving to Port Waikato. So did you move there because of the lockdown, or did you move there
no.
and then get locked down?
Yes, so I purchased my house when I was 35. In fact, the keys came in the mail just the day on the eve of my 36th birthday.
And why did you buy a house?
Why did I buy it? Because I couldn't afford anywhere else, is really the answer to that.
You were living in Auckland?
I was living in Auckland, and sisters had places at Waiheke. One sister lives in Wanaka.
That's not the librarian.
The librarian lives at Waiheke. Well, they're in Point Chev, yes, I know. I've got a sister who's a librarian.
She's a law librarian, so obviously I'm in the wrong type of librarian.
She'd hate us talking about her, we mustn't. If anyone knows who we're talking about, don't contact her and say, Nici was talking about you on stage. I mean it. No, it's okay. And so
you felt a bit of pressure to buy a property?
A lot of pressure at 35.
Which a lot of people do in New Zealand.
A lot of people do, and being a woman on my own, I had one income to buy a house, and so I was looking in Auckland. I'd always flattered and lived in, first of all, Dunedin, going to uni, but also in Ponsonby and Greyland. There was no way I could afford to buy the sort of place that I could afford to rent in. So it was really demoralising. I'd looked from about age 30 to 35, and it was just, so I trundled off to Port Waikato one day. I had no idea where it was, and I sort of arrived in a small sea-town village, and something felt right. I love remoteness. I love smallness. It makes me feel less lonely.
Which is funny, because you lived in the city for so long.
Yes, but I never really enjoyed it. I just lived there because my family lived there. I loved going to Dunedin to uni. I adored it. Then I moved to Hokianga, which was a small place. And I've really now realised that it makes me feel less lonely to live in a smaller place where there's nothing going on and no one's going out. It's true. When I go to the city, I feel so useless because people have got things to do and da-da-da-da, you know.
You'd love Marlborough.
Yeah, great. Yes, because you have a book festival once a year, and that would be enough for me. Yeah.
We'll invite you back.
Yeah, great. Please do. Yeah.
So you were living in the city, but then you went to, so did you just see a real estate ad? for
Yes, I
this
saw a
house?
mortgagee sale. It was a similar time to now. There was a real downturn, and I saw a mortgagee sale, Port Waikato. I thought, I've heard about that place, but I don't know. Drove down, nearly ran out of gas. There was no phone reception down there, and so this was 20 years ago, which I can't believe I'm saying that because it feels like it's gone like that. And so arrived there, didn't fall in love with my house initially, but it is now my dream home. Absolutely, it's a little 1950s batch, little fibrelite batch, it's beautiful. And so I thought to myself, well, I can afford this as a weekend place. So I kind of had it as a beach house, and then I always had an apartment in Auckland that I would rent, and I would come back and forward. And people would often say to me, would you like to live at the port permanently? And even though it was always a wrench to go back to the city, and again, I didn't go out in the city, by the way. I just sort of was there because friends and family were there. But people would say, do you want to live at the port? And I'd think, it would drive me crazy to live here 7 days in and out, But I was having a very wonderful life making TV, travelling a lot. So it didn't seem, like I could settle down there. COVID came along, made my life. I just went, I get it. This is what settling down feels like. So I settled down, and that's why most people that know me, when I first told them the name of my book, this is my third book, by the way, A Quiet Kitchen, they laughed because I seem so verbose. Is that a word? I think it is. You're a librarian. Yeah. And sort of out there, but in actual fact, that's because I'm out there. There's not much. I feel like there's not much point in being quiet if you're going to go out. But when I'm home, I'm very, very happy, very, very happy. So when people heard that it was called Quiet, you quiet. So it really felt like I really came out. It was like, I can only assume that people who come out with their sexuality feel the same. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm actually really quiet a lot of the time. You just see me when I happen to be out and not. So, yeah. So then lockdown came along and I gave up the apartment. I actually rented it out to some Ecuadorians who were stranded in New Zealand. I know, I sublet it. I was terrified to get found out. And then they left and I gave it up instantly because I realised I may as well be at the port, and have been ever since, and I'm so happy.
Does the Ecuadorians still live there?
No, they don't. They had a wedding during lockdown, and I was allowed to go. They could invite me into their bubble because one was German and one was Ecuadorian. So we are going off track, I know. But
it's all right. It's suddenly reminding me of Lioness Emily Perkins's book. I don't know if you've read it, but it's
yes, I have. Yeah, it's like that.
Anyway,
so I went to the Domain. It had to be outside, and there was just myself, the celebrant, and these two people who I'd never met. And she wore my grandmother's dress. That's right, because she only had sort of backpackery clothes. They had to get married to get back to Germany. That was beautiful.
That's a lovely
story. So I travelled up, went to there, and so I've been permanently at Port Waikato since 2020, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I adore it.
And so then you were at Port Waikato, and then lockdown happened.
Mm-hmm, mm.
And what happened for you when it was announced that you were going to have to stay in your house?
Yeah.
And is there a supermarket in Port Waikato?
No, not at all. There's a tiny little wharf store, but my house is a bit like an IGA. I've got
So did you get a whole lot of stuff? It was announced.
No, I got no stuff. I got no stuff because I had a lot of stuff, because my house is so well stocked and I have a fairly good garden, sort of, and I treated it as a real challenge. I was like, right, I am not going to a supermarket. I didn't go to a supermarket for 4 weeks, and I believe most of us probably could have done that, but we didn't because people suddenly became desperate to go to the supermarket. But I live alone with a cat. I must have had lots of cat food. Anyway, and so I had a couple of hours of sort of, it was only a couple of hours of kind of like, gulp, how's this going to be? I mean, I'm someone who has experienced panic attacks and anxiety, again, probably in my younger years, sort of 30s, early 40s, got a handle on it then. But I was a bit like, I almost didn't let that thought in, but there was a shadow of that. And so I text this really, I think this is also in the book, I text this really rough and ready kind of local fisherman who sometimes sort of slings me fish. And I said, hey, are you going to be around? Because I didn't know who would stay or who would make a dash for their... There's a lot of weekenders there. And he said, oh, yeah, I'll be here, yeah. And I just suddenly felt like that's okay. I didn't know this guy that well, but I was like, yeah, it's okay, we can do this. And then...
So was he also living alone?
He was, and quite a few people live alone down there.
Okay.
So me and an artist friend of mine, we agreed to sort of be in each other's, bubble. I didn't really want to see anyone. I mean, I was delighted, by the way, by this. It was like, I am off the friggin' hook. No one can invite me to their potluck. No one is going to say they want to come down to visit. I can call mum and dad, but I don't have to go and see them. I felt off the hook, which really was a wake-up call for me to how much obligation am I putting in my life here? Because I experienced nothing but delight. Then there was the moment of losing the job as Women's Weekly food editor. And at that point, thank the government for giving us some money, because I think it would have been a very fraught time if I hadn't, because I'd suddenly lost a very well-paid job and was thinking, and none of us, of course, knew how long it was going to be. So having that sort of taken care of, I think that didn't happen immediately, but anyway.
And then you started...
And then I started my little
videos.
Because I thought
what I was just going to say, so when I read about this, it was like I could see the videos happening because they're on Instagram, and it was like Nici put her phone on the windows. I don't know if this is literally what you did.
Oh, yeah.
Can you just explain?
So I have a kitchen sink, those of you that watch, and up above just happens to be a sill. And so I would rest my phone on there, sort of trying to, here's my phone here, and it was a bit like, I'll put the glass, that doesn't work, I'll put it there. It was literally like that. So I look back on those first videos, they were way more entertaining than now, because now I'm quite organised. And they'd fall in the food, and they'd fall off, and I'd go, oh shit, and all that. And my reason for doing it, I think, was that I'm from parents who love to help. And so I wanted to, there felt to me in this country like we had a sort of call to arms or something similar. I loved us being obedient. I loved my daily check-ins being told what to do and what not to. I loved it for some strange reason. I loved the structure. I broke the rule every day by going for a swim, mostly, because we weren't really allowed to do that. So the first few, but we live in a small community, everyone knows I'm a daily swimmer. Well, because I was a real stickler for the rules, except when it came to me. So the first few days, probably only 2 swims, I sort of brazenly went down, with towels slung over shoulder, and went down for my swim. And then I was like, actually, this is not okay. So, and then after that, I would just go down on my bike. I think you were sort of allowed to do that. I'd go down on my bike, not with towels and things, just with my clothes, and then I'd strip off to head togs underneath, and I'd quickly go for a swim and come back. Because I just, in the end, no one followed the rules and sort of that kind of thing. So it was, it was an interesting time for sure. But I was sure that it was going to be okay, and it was for me.
But with your filming, because
there's the filming,
Nici told us last night, I love this story, is that when you were a kid, you used to play cooking shows.
I did.
And you would go like, camera 1, look at the dry ingredient. And so how old would you have been? Because was there any cooking shows? What was on?
There was Hudson and Halls that I would watch when I was sort of babysitting. So I must have been about 12, but not even. Before that, I used to do the cooking shows. We had no TV, which I thought was because we were poor. My parents now say it was a conscious, choice. I was like, I thought we just weren't wealthy. Well, we sort of weren't that wealthy anyway. Well, my dad hates me saying that because we were probably very middle class. But anyway, so I always used to play these little cooking shows. So, yes, my call to arms, I thought, I had a quiet chuckle. I was like, people are going to really struggle to think about what to cook now, because no one could go and get takeaways or go out to restaurants or go to the supermarket constantly. No. So I did kind of think, oh my God. So I thought, I can help. I cook dinner for myself every night. Easy food. It's always from the pantry because I live rurally. So I can't run off to Faro or I don't know what you've got here, Vitro or supermarket or whatever. Whereas when I'm in the city, if I do live there, I'm all constantly off to get, I want that, so I'll go and get it. I can't. So in all of my books, and it's something that I didn't notice, but people would say, I've got all the ingredients. Well, of course you do. They're just pantry items. And so I thought, well, I know. I'll show people what I'm cooking. It was also for company for me. And so whatever people say about social media, I feel much less alone when I was doing that. It was for my own sense of loneliness as well, and to manage that solitude. And so I would get lovely feedback from people, and also I was just sort of keeping myself company. So the director from World Kitchen, who directed me for all those years, she's a good friend, Martha Jeffries, extraordinary director, and she said to me a little while ago, she said, you realise when you do those Instagram, you don't look down the barrel, you don't look, which is right at the lens.
Yeah,
I said, I know. And she said, is that deliberate? And I said, look, I'm just looking at myself, darling. I said, I'm just literally keeping myself company. Yeah. So if you look at the lens, you can't see yourself because you're doing there and you're looking at this. I'm like, I'm just there keeping myself company, Martha. She said, I just thought you'd like to know. And I said, no, it's fine. And I don't know if it's distracting for others, but it's really distracting for me. I'm sure I'd get used to it, but I'm literally just doing it sort of for myself, which may be the ultimate definition of narcissism. I'm not sure.
Nici, you could absolutely tell that you were doing that because the other thing is, and I really admire this about you as a woman, I don't wear a lot of makeup.
Right.
And I love that you would just do your thing as you were.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the first time that I went to do it, I sort of took a look at myself and thought, oh, gee, look at that. And I thought, shall I go and put a little... And then I went, I never want to go down that line because I loved making TV, but there were some things that I really didn't like, and that was putting loads of makeup on. I didn't do it, but somebody did. And I hated it with a vengeance. I wasn't always dissatisfied when I actually saw the show. I would go, oh, that's good, I look good. It's just a joke because we don't look like that in real life. And so I'm so happy that right at the start of that, I went, I won't do that because otherwise, But sometimes I do watch the videos back and I'm like, oh, that's a fright. I'll tell you what, though, I did start wearing a bra. I did, because in the first one, my big boob was and it was low.
I didn't know
and it was sort of there.
I wasn't looking.
No, I'm sure you weren't looking. And one of my friends she commented. And I thought, yeah, that is true. That's like, well, they're low now.
She's a good friend.
Yeah, she's a good friend. She knows how to say things. So from then on, I did usually wear a bra, unless I was in my dressing gown to angle the camera, but I was aware of the boobage, yeah. It was the only concession I made.
I think it's something to do with those with that no makeup and the as you are, how you come. It's about your open personality, like you are who you are. And I sometimes think that makeup, for me, it's pretending, it's putting on another character.
It's such a mask, and I don't know why we do it. I bet
there's some people do everything.
I mean, I've got a little foundation on today, and I'm not sure why we do it because we really are covering up our true selves, and even men are starting to do it now, and that seems extreme to me. And I'm like, why does that seem extreme? But it doesn't seem extreme that women would do it. So yeah, I think it's good for us not to do that because whenever you start, I've never been into heels because I know that. When I wear them, I feel very much like I'm in drag because I don't know how to walk well in heels. And so I always feel a little clumsy. And I think once you get used to height, once you get used to your face looking great, when you don't, you become dissatisfied with your real self. And I've worked really hard to combat and to garner satisfaction in myself. Yeah, my true self.
Because it's something about... particularly women, I feel, are judged by their appearance and by not wearing makeup. I mean, not that I don't brush my hair in the morning, but but not wearing makeup, it kind of it's who I am, and I'm judged for me and not for I don't know. I don't know.
No, I think it's very true. And if you turn up as yourself, life is really much less stressful. So I was reflecting this morning on getting ready for being here today, and in previous jobs, I used to do a lot of leadership training and consulting. and I would get a really bad sleep the night before, and I would really over-prep. I was working mostly with accountants and lawyers and that sort of thing, and then in the morning on the way sometimes to work, and often this was in Melbourne, this is where I have this image from, I remember thinking it would be good to be run over by a tram. And it's a little bit funny, but it's sort of that idea that you're so unhappy with your existence and what you're doing that I certainly wasn't actively thinking about ending my life, but if my life had ended, it would have saved me going and doing the training. It would have saved me to have to go and do that quite stressful job. And this morning I had the most beautiful sleep. And I woke up and I lazed about in bed reading cups of tea, reading this to pull a quote from it, and have cups of tea. And I was just so incredibly unstressed because I'm not here going to tell a lie or try and be anything that I'm not. And if at all possible, we should all be aiming for that. It's not always easy. I needed money, and I couldn't have done this when in my 20s and 30s. I needed some money to buy a house. And so it's... If we're really unhappy, I think it comes out in a lot of ways if we're not happy with what we're doing, if we're not sort of in alignment. Yeah.
Speaking of reading, would you mind reading us a little bit?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I don't know.
I should have
what
probably
the time
asked
is.
you.
Have we
We're
gone
all
over
good.
time?
We've got
yet?
heaps of time.
Oh, have we? Oh,
We've got
great.
plenty of time.
I love it.
Just
I never know. So this is from the latest book, so I wrote A Quiet Kitchen and felt like we're done. That's good. And I sort of didn't care if anybody read it or not. The publishers probably did, but I didn't. And
This is the first one.
And I very much had this feeling of, when it came back as a book, it was like, and I've done it with the second book as well. I don't want to reread it because it feels like, was any of that true? You know, I don't question the recipes. I always know they'll be fantastic. The photography's amazing, but I'm always like, is it just me that thinks like this? Is this just a bunch of bleating? Is this, I have all these questions. I think most writers probably do. So I never sort of read it for a while, and then I'm forced to when it then comes around to interview time or whatever. And I start to read it again, and it's like, phew. It's okay. It's sort of, I stand by those words still. Anyway, I thought A Quiet Kitchen was done, and then we had Cyclone Gabrielle last year that really knocked me again, and I felt like I went through another big transition of life, and having to deepen and learn more about the world, and my world and our changing world. I really felt like I say at the beginning of here that I felt like I was really having to sort of, it was a little bit like breaking up with the whenua, the land, when it all flooded around us. It was devastating, as I'm sure anyone here from Kaikoura and yourselves know. When something drastic happens, you got cut off from Nelson and all of that. It's frightening. But I'm not going to read about that. I'm going to read about something different. So this is from one of the chapters. So my chapters are not ever in sort of salads and poultry and meat and desserts. They're in things like solitude and loneliness is one chapter. And in that book, I think there's joy, dream dinners and depression. And plenty good enough. And this one is I'm going to read from a chapter called It's the Small Things. Forget momentous. I'm convinced it's the collection of small moments that add up to a contented life. When I think how I was in my 20s and 30s, constantly seeking the big thing that would bring me health, wealth or happiness, I marvel I didn't run myself right off a cliff in my haste. It's so utterly clear to me now that it's about nurturing and practicing all the little habits that eventually add up to a thoroughly contented life. Disciplined people will tell you it's not about what you do once in a while that make a difference, but the smaller habits you create to incorporate into your daily life. I'm impeccably undisciplined in so many ways. Housework, doing yoga at home, gardening, keeping my car clean, regularly exercising, not eating all the chocolate at once. Yet in other ways, I'm so dedicated and committed. My ocean swimming, regardless of the season or weather, is now a firm habit. Cooking a proper meal for myself most nights has never been an issue for me. Putting fresh flowers in the bathroom on the regular brings me so much joy. Maintaining a curiosity about my own personal development and not putting knives in the dishwasher. I found one in our dishwasher from the house last night. It's all right, it's not my knife. I also prioritise a raft of self-care practices because for me they help ward off fatigue, depression, a flare-up of arthritis, or simply to manage mid-age as gracefully as possible. These are things like ample sleep, zero alcohol, plenty of greens, no caffeinated drinks, rest, quietness, days when I don't talk, saying no to things that feel right, not committing to things too far in the future, leaving the bench clear at nights, or clear of dishes before I go to bed, packing at least a few days ahead of a departure, soaking in a spa. It's taken me ages to realise that it's really one thing that keeps the ship upright. It's more likely to be a bunch of stuff that adds up to what makes a difference. A little trick I use in times of discontent is to ask myself, what would make me 10% more comfortable, happy, contented, relaxed right now? And I do that thing. Eat an ice block, shift the cushion, add another layer of clothing, put on a podcast, light some incense, open a window, plan a holiday, call a friend, have a cuppa, take a slow walk. You get the picture. I do the same when I'm creating a new dish or cooking a meal. I ask myself, what else does this need? And often it's just the little add-on that will make the dish really stand out. A scattering of toasted crumbs, crumbs or seeds on a salad, or roasted vegetables, a homemade condiment, a sweet and hot chutney, a little jar of burnt butter to dip into. They're often the things that we like when we're eating out, the things that extra flourish, drizzle, dollop, and they're really easy to create at home. Having these on hand can easily jazz up, that's an expression my gorgeous Nana Jessie used to use, a meal. These recipes are some of my absolute favourite small things that make a big difference to any meal. And I particularly love the photograph that was chosen for this page, and it's it's the little things, and it's my big bottom.
I was
in
looking at that one.
And that
I
one
love
too.
that photo.
So that's at the front. That's at the hill. That's a hill that quite often has such solace for me. And then there's that wonderful one of me diving into it. And the photographer Todd said, I really love this photograph. Yeah. What do you think? I thought, oh yeah, that can go in. And he said, do you think? Because it's my big middle-aged bum. And he was sort of delighted that I would be fine with that, and I absolutely was, Do
you know that big bottoms are really fashionable now?
Well, haven't they always been?
It's like, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, there you go, big-bottomed girls. Yeah.
I love that piece because it really kind of sums up your, you can see you in your house, you can see you in your kitchen, you can see you sprinkling the last little bit. What I love about this book, I've been with my mother for a little bit recently, and I made her something. I also enjoy cooking, and I'd made her something for dinner, and we sat down, and she said, it always amazes me that it takes you an hour to cook something and then we eat it in 5 minutes. And I can't...
Wow. Thanks,
and I was reading your book, and I was sharing your book with her, and I was like, I was just really sad about that, that she felt like that, because for me, and I know for you...
It's the cooking.
It's the cooking is the journey, the cooking is the
Absolutely.
joy. It's not the eating so much as the joy. The eating is the joy, but the cooking is the joy.
Absolutely, it's the cooking, and I always feel a little bit guilty because I haven't had children, so I haven't had that rather onerous task of having to cook a meal so often for others. I've been a stepmum a couple of times in my life, which whenever I say that, it feels like I've buried the kids in the backyard or something. But, and those were probably the lowest points of my sort of cooking ease, cooking enjoyment, I would say, because I didn't have to, there was somebody else in the relationship, but I sort of had to produce a meal and often, whereas I do produce a meal and often, but it doesn't feel like it's a task, or I don't feel like I have to for me. But I agree that handling food can be, it's such a connection, you don't need to feel lonely when food is comfort, I think we've got this awful idea of comfort food being the tub of ice cream or that sort of awful, it's such a slanderous term, this idea of comfort eating, and it's always attributed to women. It's not often attributed to men. We don't really, I don't think so. We don't think of men, do we? We don't think, oh, he's comfort eating. It's something that women do. and we give ourselves a hard time about it. It's it's like
as a guilty
thing. Food gives huge comfort. And I know when I'm a little out of sorts because I won't feel like cooking, and I'm like, ooh, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And that was another big part of the genesis of A Quiet Kitchen, as well as the cyclone. I'd also had COVID in November, I think for the second time that year before. And no, that was the first time I had COVID. And I lost my appetite for cooking, not for eating. I still had my taste, still had my smell, and you could put a big plate of food in front of me and I would hoover it down, as per. But tell your mother, eating fast is fine. But I'd lost my verve for cooking. And my mother is going through something similar at the moment. She's just had COVID for the first time. And she was so delighted when I described this to her, because I said, you've lost your passion for cooking, haven't you? I said, it will come back. But I wrote this book to coax that back into me, because I had no ideas about food. I think about food and ideas and dishes all day. I'm not a highfalutin foodie. I just think about food and eating and cooking. But I had nothing. Nothing was going on. I wasn't depressed. I mean, that thought was a bit anxiety-provoking, like, oh, what if my passion for food doesn't come back? But I'm okay, I can make a change, But it has come back. But it was quite interesting that without that, I was really missing something very relaxing for me, which is the handling of food, which I think it's great. I think it should take you as long as it needs. I'm not all for fast 15 minutes, food in a minute, this, that and the other. It's, but I also understand people live differently, away at work all day and then you come home and have to throw something together. But enjoy that process of throwing whatever it is together.
I think part of it with the children thing, or the having to prepare a meal for somebody else, is sometimes thinking about it's being a bit selfish and thinking, actually, I just want to make what I want to eat. Possibly,
yeah.
I don't know. Because often when you're cooking for other people, you're actually thinking about what they might want to eat.
That's very true. No, that's absolutely true, and
But that must be a real luxury.
It's a luxury. It really is, and what it doesn't mean for me is I think I've met a lot of readers who have said, "Thank you. I now make your recipes. I used to just do the cheese on toast ever since my husband left or died, or a man might say." I had a beautiful gentleman the other day, John, who contacted me on an email to say, I made your lamb shanks from, it was in Canvas, the New Zealand Herald the other day, and they didn't work out. I cooked them for an hour and a half, they didn't work out, I'll never be making it again. So that always gives me a fright. I'm like, I went back to my recipe, I thought, no, it should have worked out, it's very interesting. So I went straight back to him on an email and said, what's your phone number, I'll give you a call. And so I called him, and of course he was delighted, and he was an old geezer, and he said he now does all the cooking for him and his wife. She has dementia. And so I said, oh, John, I'm so sorry, that must have been so disappointing. And we just talked through what could have happened differently. And he'd even had a guest over. Oh, John, I said, I'm so very sorry for that, And we were okay, and he'll give them another go, I hope. Or else, if he's in Auckland, I'm going to drop him around some. He might think I'm a crazy stalker. Who knows?
Or he might put you on speed dial.
Or he might. Who knows? I don't know.
5 o'clock every night, Nici.
Nici, that recipe didn't work again, yeah. Anyway, but, I think this idea of sort of cooking, and keeping on cooking for ourselves is I think it's really important. I really do. So I don't think the cheese on toast is an option, or just do a little quick omelette. I don't think it's going to get you anywhere. It's going to make you feel more lonely. Yeah. Nourish yourselves.
Where do you think your love of food, relationship where did it come from?
Definitely from my mother, who is really the same as me. She just thinks food all of the time, but not in the way that other people... I think we think about cooking for others. It's that idea of giving food. It's that idea of the nourishment of food. I think there's love involved there. And her mother, Jessie, was amazing, was an incredible cook, and she was very independent as a woman. She always had her own job and her own money. She wasn't wealthy, but she looked wealthy, and she was a dressmaker. She was extraordinary, and Nana was the most amazing cook. And every Wednesday we would, from all through primary and secondary school, we'd go home on a Wednesday for lunch. So we'd duck out of school, we just lived around the corner, and we'd go home, and Nana would have made homemade fish and chips or homemade pies or whatever. She was amazing. And then on a Sunday, the whole family would travel across Auckland, about 45 minutes back in the day, to their place in Avondale. And we'd arrive, and there would be butterfly cakes, fried oysters, little mint savouries, all this afternoon tea, and we would make spiders, those drinks with ice cream and fizzy drink. And then that would all be cleared away, and then this buffet dinner would happen that would have sweet and sour pork and a roast. And I mean, Mum and I now look at each other, we're like, because I'm from a family of 5 daughters and Mum and Dad, so we're a family of 7, would arrive like locusts. And we look back, we're like, my God, Nana did all of that. She was quite young when she was doing this because she died very young. So she would have been in her, I guess, I don't know, 50s, 60s when she was doing this for us. But yeah, so my love comes from that, absolutely. My love of food, my love of cooking.
It's funny you should talk about your grandmother, and because for me during lockdown, for some reason, I felt like I was living like my grandmother would have lived, making bread. You know, like thinking a lot was spent in the kitchen. You know, a lot of time in the kitchen. You know, turning the bread, or whilst I was working.
Right.
But that's really because they would have lived a very, probably a little bit similar to your Port Waikato life. You know, like there wasn't a supermarket down the road. They were living out of their gardens and their their pantries and buying in. You know, they probably bought in bulk, and they probably got meat from the farmer down the road.
Absolutely,
a lot.
or swapped things and that kind of thing. And it's a very connected, both with the land, with yourself, and with neighbours, and it slows everything down. I mean, we have a lot of people have got a lot of anxiety now, and things are pretty fast. If we're just eating whole foods, I think, which is basically unprocessed food that is in its original origin, then, we might all think that we don't eat a lot of processed food, but, a can of tomatoes is a processed food. It will have more salt in it. It might have some acidity regulator in it. I have plenty of canned tomatoes, but your body on the inside, when it's looking at our bodies are, I did phys ed at university, so I did anatomy and physiology. And I can't believe how far removed we are from knowing what our kidneys and livers do. And so I just always think about my cells, and I think my brain wants the chocolate, or the packet of twisties or something, I don't know, or the Maccas, I don't know, I don't eat that sort of stuff. But that's not true. I don't not eat that sort of stuff. I'm boycotting McDonald's at the moment, the bastards. I will put them out of business.
Sorry, can I just ask you why you're doing that?
Because there's a whole lot of companies that have deep roots in Israel, and I'm very pro-Palestine at the moment, so I'm very... so there's a boycott list of Starbucks and McDonald's and all them. And some of them are really struggling now. And boycotting is if you feel like you're not able... I can't believe I can't do more. I can't believe that all of us can't do more for what is happening currently to a groups of people all around the world. We humans really need to do better. And so one of the protest ways is to try and withdraw funds from some of those companies that are helping to weaponise other countries.
So no McDonald's?
No Maccas.
All right.
I miss it. I missed my hash browns at the airport yesterday. But anyway, but regardless of that, I'm not a big consumer of those sorts of things anyway, because our body on the inside, when it gets those sorts of chemicals and things, or food that's been structured in a different way, it then has to divert from doing what it normally does. And what it normally does is manage adrenaline, manage cortisol, release a little happy hormone there, pull a little something out of there. Our bodies are they're like going backstage and seeing all those ropes and things.
It reminds me too of the how we all think when we're drinking the no sugar Coke that it's really good for you, but that
aspartame or whatever that's in it,
is actually doing really bad things to your gut, because that's the other thing, that the gut brain
gut-brain
connection is becoming like the vagus nerve. So interesting, isn't
I know.
it?
So and it can get really complicated, but all you have to do is eat like your grandparents, but probably slightly better because we've got better cheese now. Yeah.
And olive oil. Olive oil.
And
what you can supposedly buy in the shops.
Yeah, supposedly. Oh, really? I pick olives every year with my elderly parents.
I did read that.
Go around the streets of Auckland. There's all these. The council's planted a lot of olive.
But where do you press them?
I get them pressed at a place called Braku, which is sort of out in Bombay. I'm kind of lucky. I got onto this. They don't charge me, and they press them. So we pressed. We did 120 kgs this year. It's the day when I get really cross with mum and dad because it's really busy. You've got to pick them and get them to the press within 24 hours. And my parents are old. They're very able. Dad's not that able. But so, we're putting the drop sheet out and there's a bit of wind. I'm, Dad, can you do it? And I'm always I revert to being 15. It's awful. But I was slightly better this year. We're in our 5th year. I'm getting there.
But anyway. Even that, with the olive oil kind of shortage, it's like we sort of get used to eating something when really like there's some other beautiful oils that we could be using, in the supermarket or in the shop that are absolutely fine to cook with. That
well, we just are losing connection with everything, that is not basic to human survival and needs. So during the floods in Auckland, a friend relayed to me that, her friends out in Titirangi, it was a real problem. They hadn't showered in days. We were in torrential rain, people. The water doesn't only come from the shower rose. So when we were down at the port during that time and during lockdown, you're putting buckets of water out, you're disconnecting the spout because we sometimes do. We're all on tank water anyway, so we know about that. We know about if the power's out, we've all got gas. So you're just a little bit more in touch. And I think that manages my sense of security or insecurity about stuff happening, as if I can be in charge of that.
Do you think with the lockdown and with Gabrielle and some of the other sort of big, like the storms and the heat wave, do you think the world is being shaken up? Do you get the feeling that we're being shaken up? I mean, we were literally shaken up with an earthquake here.
You were literally shaken.
And it was like that. Everything was gone. We had no power. I remember the first earthquake, the Sydney earthquake. We had a roast in the oven. It was like a Sunday afternoon or something, and so we had this. All we had was a pork roast.
Wow.
And it got dark, and we just sat outside because we had to be outside because there was aftershocks every so often, and so we were sitting outside, and I had a tiny baby, and we were just eating this pork roast. But it just sort of feels like the foundations of things
It's profoundly shifted, hasn't it? So I think I say here something about, since writing Quiet Kitchen, I've been tested in ways I never expected. I'm all shook up. On top of a pandemic, climate changes have impacted me directly and have shaken me to the core, compelling me to consider how I'm living. I'm having to figure out how to settle down in an increasingly unsettling world. How do I trust my instincts again in the face of so much uncertainty? And I go on, and I think that's absolutely true. And I just wish we would listen to all of this, because we are remarkable. We're a remarkable species, and I think COVID was the best thing that could have happened to us. And I really apologise if you lost someone during that time. And it gives me shivers to think it was our real opportunity to take stock. Emissions started rolling back, and then we just all ramped up again because we are a little trapped by capitalism. But I won't go down that line because I know you're here to talk about food.
I mean, I was thinking even this morning about people going to work at a place, not at their house, and thinking, because I was thinking about the power. My power company's asked us to, look at, where you have a peak power time, and they've said if you don't use power during that time, and I'm like, well, if everyone didn't have to get to work and to school at 8 o'clock in the morning, then 8:30 in the morning, then we probably wouldn't be having our showers. Isn't it interesting how we all have to do things at the same time?
It's kind of crazy, and we have these power shortages and things like that when we're all told to blah blah. But that should be happening all the time, and we're never really told of ways to stop consuming. Because if we all cut down our consumption by 50% or even 10%, would kind of all crumble a little. But rest assured, there's enough to go around. There's always enough power to go around. There's always enough food to go around in the world, but it's just unequally distributed. And so I'm always amazed that we don't have great glaring ads to say, I mean, now in Melbourne, because I've just been there, every single person in Melbourne since the drought's there, no one has a shower longer than 3 minutes. They just don't, because water is a resource that they know they need. Now, we at the moment have plenty of water in this country. We don't have plenty of other things. So, yeah, it is. It's interesting that we don't want to change our own behaviour. We're the ones causing everything. It's not climate change. It's not the climate changing itself. It's us changing the climate. So, yeah, I think it's good to be more conscious. And maybe I'm just old now. I mean, I do think a lot of this stuff comes out because, you know, we're finite as well, and you get to realise that over 40, you know, and certainly over 50.
Do you grow a lot in your garden at Port Waikato?
I'm good with herbs, and I'll have to be really honest here, because we're being recorded, aren't we? Yes. My mother should ever hear it. My mother is a great gardener. She loves gardening as much as she loves cooking, and she loves gardening like I love cooking. So cooking is never a chore for me. Well, very rarely. You know, if people come to help, I'm like, I don't need that. Mum's like that with gardening. She never hesitates to come down for a visit. She's out in the garden and she'll have the whole thing weeded in no time, and planted out. And then I sort of try and nurture it along. I grow a lot of greens. I've got some good citrus and good fruit trees, and always lots of herbs in the garden too. But that's my next thing. I think that's my next little step. Is I really need to crack this. When I garden, when I do it, it's probably like exercise. When you do it, I feel great, but it's just that motivation. It's not the thing I most want to do. When I'm there, I love it. But, you know, so yes, maybe if I think about it like my swims, because even though I swim most days, I never want to go for a swim. I'm really honest about that. I never want to go for a swim. I'm always like, I get down to the beach and it's cold. I'm like, why am I doing this? You know, what am I trying to prove? I go into the water, I come out, I am a new person. I am reborn.
There's something about that, isn't there?
Really is.
I was thinking about you when you said about the lockdown, how you felt like you're breaking the rules going for a swim. I was like, well, isn't that the most cleansing possible thing that you could possibly do?
Remember, we were all trying to find our way. So there was this thing about if I got into trouble in the water, then the emergency services,
of course,
you see. So that was the thing, was we weren't allowed to go riding, and you could go bicycling and walking, but you couldn't go mountain bike riding because more likely to have an accident, and then emergency services would be forced in close contacts with each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow. What a time we had. Hey?
Nici, every time I look in your book, well, a lot of the time I'm looking in your book, or I'm looking in the Good Food magazine, you're eating feijoas. Feijoas are quite a... This is a complete different topic, but, you know, feijoas tend to be people love them or people don't like them. Your opinion? I
love them, and they've become very special to me because in lockdown they were my only fruit tree. I don't have lots of fruit trees. In fact, I have citrus, but you can't munch into a lemon unless you're in Amalfi. But I had feijoas, and so I learnt to value them like nothing before. Do you get feijoa down here?
Oh, yeah.
A lot? Yeah. So you know what it's like. The first ones arrive. Oh, I love them. And then you know, by the 19th bucketful, you're like, oh. And then, you know, I now have, you know, you see people running in the opposite direction. They think you're going to try and foist some feijoas on by the end of the season. And then and the first ones that fall, I'm, oh, great. And I've got 3 marvellous feijoa trees. But I was picking them right up until the very last little ones, because they were the one fresh produce that continued, because it was autumn, of course, when we were in lockdown. So it was just an indication of, I just got to value them. They were my only fruit.
And every time I see the picture, you've got the biggest smile on your face.
There's a fantastic recipe in here that Brazilians and South Americans make with limes, where you put whole limes in a blender, and just blend them really chunkily. You can't take them down to a puree, and then you strain the juice out of them and use the limes for something else. But I've done it with feijoa in here, and then you mix it with condensed milk and ice, and you make this frothy, most amazing drink ever. So I think I might even have a feijoa milkshake moustache in there. I don't know.
Oh my!
It's really good.
My kids are going to love it.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Condensed milk and feijoa.
Yeah. yummy.
Because feijoas are quite tart, so the
They
condensed milk
are.
will
They're
work
sort of
quite well.
astringent. They're such a perfumey, gritty thing, aren't they? People, yeah, you're right. People love them or don't. I love them.
And what's your other go-to feijoa recipe? Other than eating them just like off the tree?
Well, I'm sort of. They're really fattening.
Are they?
They're full of carb and sugar. I mean, they're delicious. I'm not saying, clearly I don't care too much about that. But, so I will get some feijoa from the garden. I'll go out, get a bowl of them, and I'll stand, and I think I'll just have 2, and I'll eat a lot, like 10, 20 big ones. I just cannot stop once I start. I love them that much.
There's just something about them,
I just
isn't there?
love them.
I love
and I've
them
got
too.
3 trees, and they are 2 different varieties. And so I just scoop and scoop and scoop, and I literally can't stop. But I will put them in a cake because I love a feijoa cake. And I've got a beautiful recipe in there for a feijoa honey cake that is just, I think
I've seen that.
honey is harvested at the end of summer, and so it's sort of going into autumn as well. So I think those flavours go really nicely
And
together.
again, the sweet
Walnuts.
with the tart.
Yeah, I love them.
I just have to tell you, my son, when he was a baby, used to crawl over the grass to the feijoa tree, and you'd be like hanging the washing out, and you'd look over and he'd be just like,
Oh, I love it.
eating
Yum.
it whole. And also my kids
so
eat lemons.
Oh, do they?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. They're a little
And
bit
they don't like
Italian.
McDonald's.
Oh, great. Go your children. I love it.
I'm realising that we are, oh my gosh, it's 11:25. How is that?
How does that go so quickly? Thank
I could
you.
sit here and talk to you all day. But I'm sure someone else would like to ask a question, so I'm going to open up the floor. And it's terrible because usually I can see everybody in the audience, but tonight I can't see anybody.
we can't.
So
If you
hello
put
to
your
all
hand
the
up like
people
that,
that I
it's
don't know
better.
you. But if you have
there you all
got a question
Lovely to see you.
for Nici,
Hi.
thank you, right at the
I love the Women's Weekly magazine that you have with your mother.
Ah, yes.
So that recipe is just, the recipes in that, every single one. But I can't find it. It's
Oh, it's
only in the
Karen.
library, and I've got it out so many times.
Oh, they had it in the library.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
but I can't. I want it.
They're not available anymore.
Tell me again what it was, Karen.
It's the Women's Weekly. It's about 2020 or something.
I think it was. It was just before we'd
Or
finished up with
2019
them.
With
Yeah.
your mum, and it's just baking, and it's just a fantastic magazine.
Is it called even? I wonder if we called it like My Mum's Kitchen
I
or
think it
something.
is. Yeah.
And so I think it was a collection of, because Mum and I both wrote for Women's Weekly. It was kind of a collection of all of those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know either.
Every
Leave me with
single
your
one is a
address before we
great,
go.
great
Yeah.
recipes in
They
it.
were, because there were a lot of Mum's recipes.
The
are just
best
great.
sponge, easiest
Oh,
sponge.
that's great. Mum and I just had a sponge failure in Melbourne. We had to go take 2. Great. Oh, thanks for saying.
Yeah. So they're
is
not
good.
available. You haven't got one hidden somewhere. that you
Well,
want to
come
get
and
rid
see
of?
me afterwards. I just might. Yeah.
Karen, was it a special edition?
It was.
kind
It
of
was just
thing?
like a magazine. It was like
yes.
it was about the size of an Australian Woman's Weekly. It sort of had a slight spine thing on it, didn't it? Mum and I, we laugh at that cover. They put so much makeup on. We're always like, we're like a couple of brides. Because when your friend is walking down the aisle and you barely recognise them because they've had their hair and makeup done.
What's your mum's name?
Carol. Yeah.
Carol.
Yeah. Yeah, she's a dag. Yeah. We both look horrific. Thank you for
Any
saying.
more questions?
Great.
Nici?
Thank you, Nici. Very entertaining. You've really stirred up my thoughts. But this is a very prosaic question. You're living alone and you've cooked this lovely meal. Have you got any tips on the cleaning up? Because there's nobody going to come and do the dishes behind you, are they?
No, that's right. But my dishwasher is called Peter. And I love Peter, and I have a dish drawer, a single dish drawer, and because my kitchen's so small, and I got a second-hand dishwasher off Trade Me, and it's sort of shoved in. It's not even properly done. It's hilarious, but and it's not right under the sink where it should be. And it changed my life because I go through in a day lots of cups and saucers and cutlery, not so much pots and pans. I'll usually do those by hand anyway, but everything ends up off the bench and in there, which is great, and then Peter takes care of it, so it's just great because I can't stand dishes, so there's a lot of my recipes are also, they don't create a lot of dishes. There'll be a So this is not in this book, but I just recently did a citrus self-sourcing pudding, and it was, make the batter in this bowl and then scrape that into the, your ceramic dish, and then just make your sauce in that one too. Don't be getting a jug out sort of thing, because I can't stand dishes. So always my food is a few things. From making TV, they'll usually be, if it's a savoury thing, it'll usually be something that can be way overcooked or can be stopped and started, and that comes from making a lot of TV, where you're stopping and starting for filming purposes. And so the dishes, you need to be able to mix something and have it sit there, or cook it way over while I'm gabbling to the TV and we're cutting and this, that and the other. So it's what I call forgiving recipes. There's nothing too exact about it. And there won't be a lot of dishes because they become a hassle on set, if you know what I mean. And in real life, believe it or not, too. So yeah, great question. I swear I became a cook though because how there's sort of that thing of the cook doesn't have to do the dishes. I'm sure that's why I sort of, back in the family and flats, I'd say, I'll cook. I wouldn't have to do the dishes.
Is it okay to cook something and then cook something else in it? Like say you had a skillet.
Yes.
So recently, I'm going to tell you, I made some, we always have pizza on a Friday night, and so there was like a pan that had onion, had been cooking in it, and then I came home on Saturday morning from the gym and I just really wanted to eat some eggs, and so I cooked the scrambled eggs.
Ooh, yum.
I'm always going to do it now.
Oh, because it's so great, isn't it?
So the eggs, scrambled eggs in the onion pan. It's just like they take on this beautiful, and I'm addicted to it now.
If I do another book, I'm gonna write that in. That's great.
No.
I am, because that's a great
you
tip.
better credit me.
Of course I will, Tania. Of course I will. That is great. I'll send you a free copy.
I'm so excited.
That's a great idea. And the only thing I can liken it to is I'll often have, if I've been doing some shallow or deep frying if I'm going to deep fry, everyone's like, I can't be bothered deep frying. Just use a little pot, people. And it's, again, if you're just one in the house, you should have lots of little pans and dishes. That's the biggest transition to make, is from big family size things. And I'll take a little pot, which means you don't use much oil to get some depth. And once I had obviously cooked some onions in it, so there was a little bit of leftover onion flavour and little onions in it. And then I cooked some fries in it, some hot chips. I will never do it. I never do it any other way either, because they just have this beautiful flavour. Yeah. And if you haven't yet discovered my hot chip recipe in this book, the first one, A Quiet Kitchen, I'll save you, you do buy it, but you chop up your potatoes and you put them in the pot. Nothing is in the pot yet, people. You chop up your fries and then you pour cold oil over them until it's just about covering the potatoes, the chips, and then you put it on the stove and you put about medium-high, and then you turn your stove, your element on to about medium to medium-high, and you time it for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. After about 15 minutes, you can give them a little shake. And maybe towards the end you can sort of give them a little stir. Perfectly crisp, beautiful fries every time. And and hardly any of the oil gets used. You'll have most of the oil once you lift the chips out.
And if it doesn't work, you can just email her. She'll ring you.
Can I do that? Can I also say that in closing, that absolutely you can. I'm really serious about it. You can always Instagram or Facebook message me, absolutely, because I want recipes to work out well for people and to add to your lives, not add to the stress in your lives. So they ought to work. If they don't, we'll problem solve and figure out why they haven't. But, if you haven't got an ingredient but you'd like to make something, you can message me. I won't always reply instantly, of course, but, I'll do what I can. I haven't got creme fraiche, but could I use something else? Yes, of course you can. You can use this, that, or the other. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there any more questions before? We've just realised I've just gone a little bit over time. Are you sure? No more burning questions? Nici, I feel like you've discovered the secret of happiness.
Oh, some days.
In your little place in Port Waikato.
Thank you.
I didn't know where Port Waikato was. I had to look it up. I thought it was, I actually used to live in Hamilton, so I thought it must be around Raglan or somewhere. And then I realised it wasn't. It was a completely different place. It looks like paradise, but I hope that you have discovered another little piece of paradise here at the Marlborough Book Festival.
I have.
I'm here this weekend. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us. Nici will be signing books, obviously. that you all want to buy for yourself, not only yourself, but your friends and your family, and anybody else that you might know or see on the street. Paper Plus, Karen and Simon out there will sell you some, and Nici will be available for signing. So thank you so much for coming today.
Kia ora. Thank you so much.